For 12 years I busted my butt building Dad's company to 75 million. Then at dinner he smirked. Now your brother Jake's taking over. My heart sank, but I forced a smile. The next morning at the office, everything flipped upside down. Marcus stared at the mahogany conference table, where his father had just delivered the blow. 12 years. 12 damn years of 16-hour days, missed birthdays, canceled vacations. He transformed their small Denver construction firm from a struggling $2 million operation into a $75 million empire. His hands still bore calluses from those early days when he'd worked alongside the crews, proving himself worthy of respect. Richard Thornton sat back in his leather chair, that familiar smirk playing across his weathered face. Jake lounged beside him, looking like he'd just won the lottery without buying a ticket. You understand, son, his father continued. Jake's got the vision for the future. Fresh perspective. Fresh perspective. Marcus's jaw clenched. Jake had spent the last decade bouncing between failed startups and European business trips funded by Daddy's money. The words echoed in Marcus's mind as he forced his facial muscles into something resembling acceptance. His wife Sarah would be devastated. They'd planned their whole future around him eventually taking over. The house they'd bought in Cherry Hills, their twin daughters' college funds. Everything built on the assumption that loyalty and hard work mattered. Of course, Dad, Marcus heard himself saying. Whatever's best for the company. Jake's grin widened. Don't worry, big brother. I'll take good care of your baby. Your baby. As if Marcus hadn't poured his soul into every contract, every relationship, every strategic decision that had built their reputation. As if the late nights spent negotiating with suppliers and smoothing over client concerns meant nothing. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and bitter thoughts. Sarah took the news worse than he'd expected. She didn't scream or throw things. That would have been easier. Instead, she sat perfectly still at their kitchen table, her coffee growing cold between her hands. 12 years, she whispered. We gave them 12 years. The twins, Emma and Sophie, chose that moment to burst through the door, backpacks flying, chattering about their school day. Their innocent enthusiasm felt like salt in an open wound. How could he explain that their comfortable life might be about to change? That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah's quiet breathing. By morning, he'd made his decision. He wouldn't go down without a fight. The elevator ride to the 20th floor of the Thornton building felt different. Everything looked the same. The polished granite lobby, the company logo he'd helped redesign 5 years ago. Marcus's assistant, Janet, looked up nervously as he approached. 22 years with the company, she'd become more than an employee, practically family. Her expression told him she'd already heard the news. Morning, Mr. Marcus, she said quietly. Your father wants to see you in his office. The walk down the executive hallway felt like a condemned man's final steps. But as Marcus pushed open the heavy oak door, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. Jake sat behind their father's desk, feet propped up, rifling through confidential files. Their father was nowhere to be seen. Oh, hey, Marcus. Jake looked up with that infuriating grin. Dad's at the doctor, routine checkup. Thought I'd get familiar with the important stuff. Important stuff. Those files contained every major contract, every client relationship Marcus had cultivated, every trade secret that gave them their competitive edge. Those are confidential, Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. Jake waved him off. Not anymore, brother. Dad signed over full access yesterday. I'm thinking we need some major changes around here. Starting with that outdated client management system you've been babying. Outdated system. Marcus had spent 2 years implementing that software, training the entire staff, streamlining operations that had increased their efficiency by 30%. But Jake wouldn't know that. He'd been too busy finding himself in Bali during the implementation. And honestly, Jake continued, leaning back in their father's chair, some of these contracts are way too conservative. We could be making double the profit if we cut some corners. Cut corners. In construction, corners meant safety violations, substandard materials, lawsuits waiting to happen. Everything Marcus had worked to avoid. Jake, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Jake interrupted. You've been playing it safe for too long. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not anger, something colder, more calculating. Jake had just revealed exactly how little he understood about the business, about reputation, about the relationships that actually made their success possible. You're right, Marcus said slowly. Maybe it is time for some changes. Jake's eyes lit up. Now you're talking. I knew you'd come around. Marcus nodded, already forming a plan. If Jake wanted to play with the big boys, he'd learn what 12 years of experience really meant. But first, Marcus needed to secure what mattered most. That afternoon, he made a series of phone calls, casual conversations with their biggest clients, just checking in. How was the Morrison project going? Any concerns about the upcoming Henderson contract? Standard relationship maintenance? The kind Jake would never think to do. By evening, Marcus had a clearer picture, and what he discovered made his pulse quicken with possibility. 3 of their largest clients had the same concern: contract renewal clauses that Jake, in his eagerness to maximize profit, had been pressuring them to sign. Clauses that would lock them into higher rates with reduced service guarantees. Marcus had spent years building these relationships on trust and reliability. Jake was about to destroy that in weeks. Marcus spent the weekend at his home office, going through every contract, every client file, every detail Jake had dismissed as outdated. A pattern emerged, one that could either save the company or destroy it, depending on how the next few weeks played out. Monday morning brought an unexpected call from their biggest client, Morrison Industries. Tom Morrison had been working with the Thornton Company for 8 years, ever since Marcus had personally overseen the construction of their flagship facility. Marcus, we need to talk. Tom's voice was strained. This new contract your brother sent over, it's not what we agreed on. Marcus closed his office door before responding. What exactly did Jake propose? 40% increase in rates, plus elimination of the quality guarantee clause. Marcus, you know we've had issues with other contractors before. That guarantee is the only reason we've stayed loyal to Thornton. 40%. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Jake was going to kill their most profitable relationship over greed and inexperience. Tom, give me 24 hours. I'll handle this personally. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his chair, staring out at the Denver skyline. His father's company, his company, was about to be destroyed by someone who'd never spent a day understanding what made it successful. That's when Marcus realized he'd been thinking about this all wrong. He'd been trying to save his position in the company, but maybe it was time to save the company from his family. The next morning, Marcus walked into Jake's office with a proposal. I've been thinking about what you said, Marcus began, about playing it safe. Jake looked up from his phone, clearly pleased with himself. Finally ready to make some real money? Actually, yes. I want to propose a partnership. You handle the big picture strategy. I'll manage the day-to-day operations. Split the profits 50-50. It was a lie, of course. But Jake's eyes gleamed with the kind of greed that made people stupid. 50? 50? I don't know, Marcus. Dad put me in charge. Think about it, Marcus pressed. You get all the credit for the vision. I handle the boring operational stuff. You can focus on the exciting new opportunities. Jake leaned back, considering. What kind of opportunities? Marcus pulled out a folder he'd prepared. I've identified 3 potential acquisition targets. Small companies we could absorb, expand our market share. The acquisition targets were real. Marcus had been researching them for months. But his timeline was accelerated now, and his motivations had changed completely. This is interesting, Jake said, flipping through the documents. But why bring me in as partner? Why not just present this to Dad? Because Dad's getting older, Marcus replied carefully. And honestly, Jake, you're right about needing fresh perspective. I've been too conservative. It killed him to say it, but Jake's ego made him predictable. Sure enough, Jake's chest puffed with pride. All right, brother, you've got a deal. They shook hands, and Marcus felt like he was making a pact with the devil. But sometimes the devil was the only one who could give you what you needed. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus worked 18-hour days. Publicly, he was the loyal lieutenant, implementing Jake's vision. Privately, he was building something else entirely. The beauty of Jake's incompetence was how easy it made everything else. While Jake focused on impressing their father with grand plans and flashy presentations, Marcus quietly reached out to their key employees. "I'm starting a new company," he told Janet during a private lunch. "Same values, same commitment to quality. Interested?" Janet didn't hesitate. "After watching that boy destroy everything you built, when do we start?" One by one, Marcus approached the people who actually made the company run. The project managers who'd worked with him for years, the site supervisors who trusted his judgment, the client relationship managers who'd built their reputation on reliability. None of them said no. Marcus had learned something important about loyalty over the years. It wasn't tied to a company name or a family legacy. It was earned through respect, consistency, and treating people like they mattered. The hardest part was the waiting. Marcus had to watch Jake make mistake after mistake, alienating clients and employees while their father remained obliviously proud of his visionary son. The Morrison contract was the final straw. Jake had pushed too hard, demanding terms that would have bankrupted Morrison's profit margins. When Tom Morrison called to cancel their largest project, Jake actually seemed surprised. "I don't understand," Jake complained to Marcus. "The numbers were completely reasonable." "Sometimes it's not about the numbers," Marcus replied. "It's about relationships." "Relationships don't pay the bills," Jake shot back. That night, Marcus made his final preparations. His new company, Cornerstone Construction, was ready to launch. He'd secured funding through his own connections, signed lease agreements for office space, and most importantly, had verbal agreements from 6 major clients. All he needed now was the right moment to make his move. The moment came 3 weeks later, during the quarterly board meeting. Jake had prepared an elaborate presentation about their aggressive growth strategy, complete with projected revenue increases that existed only in his imagination. Marcus sat quietly as Jake presented numbers that didn't add up, timelines that were impossible, and promises that would destroy their reputation. Their father nodded approvingly, while the other board members, longtime family friends, exchanged worried glances. "Any questions?" Jake asked confidently. Marcus stood up. "Actually, yes. Jake, can you explain how we're going to deliver the Henderson project with a 40% reduced timeline while maintaining quality standards?" Jake's confident expression flickered. "Well, obviously, we'll need to optimize our processes." "Which processes, specifically?" The room fell silent as Jake fumbled for an answer that didn't exist. Marcus pressed his advantage. "And the Morrison cancellation, how does that fit into your growth projections?" That's a temporary setback," Jake stammered. "Morrison will come back when they see our improved efficiency. They canceled because you tried to charge them 40% more for 20% less service," Marcus said calmly. "That's not efficiency, Jake. That's bad business." Their father's face had gone pale. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" Marcus pulled out his own folder, one he'd been preparing for months. "I'm talking about the 8 clients who are considering canceling their contracts. The 12 employees who've submitted resignation letters. The 3 safety violations that have gone unreported." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Jake's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "You're lying!" Jake shouted. "You're just jealous because Dad chose me." "I'm not lying," Marcus replied quietly. "And I'm not jealous. I'm disappointed." Marcus turned to address the entire room. 12 years ago, I made a promise to help build this company into something we could all be proud of. We accomplished that. But now I'm watching everything we built get destroyed by someone who doesn't understand what made us successful." "Marcus, please," their father said weakly. "We can work this out." "No, Dad, we can't." Marcus's voice was steady, final. "Jake wants to run the company his way, and that's his right. But I won't be part of destroying what we created." He placed a resignation letter on the conference table. "Effective immediately. I'm resigning from Thornton Construction." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake looked shocked. their father devastated. But Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months: relief. However, Marcus continued, I want to make one final offer. I'm starting my own company, Marcus announced. Cornerstone Construction. We'll focus on the same values that made Thornton successful: quality work, fair pricing, and treating clients like partners, not ATMs. Jake found his voice. You can't do that. Non-compete agreements, client lists, trade secrets. All legally handled, Marcus interrupted. I've spent 3 months making sure everything is above board. I'm not stealing anything that belongs to Thornton. I'm just taking what I've earned. Their father looked aged beyond his years. Marcus, you're destroying the family. No, Dad. I'm saving what's left of our reputation. In 6 months, when half your clients have canceled and your best employees have quit, you'll understand. Marcus walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. Jake, you wanted the company. It's yours. But remember, a company isn't just buildings and contracts. It's people, and people follow leaders they trust. 6 months later, Marcus sat in his new office overlooking downtown Denver. Cornerstone Construction occupied 3 floors of a modern building, with 52 employees and a project backlog that stretched into the next year. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom Morrison. Henderson project completed on time and under budget. You guys are incredible. Marcus smiled, thinking about how different things could have been. He'd lost his father's company, but he'd gained something more valuable: the respect of people who chose to follow him, not because of his name, but because of his character. Janet knocked on his door. Marcus, there's someone here to see you. His father walked in, looking smaller than Marcus remembered. The past 6 months had been hard on Richard Thornton. Jake's mismanagement had cost them 30% of their client base and nearly half their experienced staff. I came to apologize, his father said quietly. Marcus gestured to a chair. You don't need to apologize, Dad. You made the choice you thought was right. No, I made the choice that was easy, Richard replied. Jake was always the charming one, the one who made me laugh. You were the one who made me proud, but I never told you that enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city bustle below. Jake's asking for help, Richard continued. The company's in trouble. Real trouble. Marcus nodded. He'd heard the rumors: missed deadlines, cost overruns, dissatisfied clients. What do you want me to do about it? I'm not asking you to come back, Richard said. I know that bridge is burned, but maybe you could give him some advice? Help him understand what he's doing wrong? Marcus considered the request. His anger toward Jake had faded over the months, replaced by something closer to pity. I'll make you a deal, Marcus said finally. If Jake comes here himself, admits he made mistakes, and genuinely wants to learn, not just save face, I'll spend one afternoon explaining how this business really works. Richard's eyes filled with hope. You'd do that? I'd do it for the employees who are still there, Marcus replied. They don't deserve to lose their jobs because of Jake's pride. 2 weeks later, Jake appeared in Marcus's office. He looked exhausted, humbled in a way Marcus had never seen before. I screwed up, Jake said simply. Everything you predicted happened, and I have no idea how to fix it. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying his brother. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine desperation. All right, Marcus said. Let's talk. They spent 4 hours going through everything: client management, employee relations, project planning, financial oversight. Jake took notes, asked questions, and for the first time in their lives, listened without interruption. Marcus never went back to Thornton Construction, but he watched from a distance as Jake slowly began implementing the lessons he'd learned. The company survived, though it never regained its former glory. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's succeeding so completely that their failures become irrelevant. Marcus had built something better than what he'd lost, surrounded by people who chose to be there. And in the end, that was worth more than any family legacy.